Hello, I'm Amy from Astrology, and today I am going to be looking at the way of the world and what is going on at the moment. So without further ado, if you want a reading with me, you can go over to moonmindology.com, and that is where you can book an appointment. So let's move on. At the beginning of October, we had an eclipse at 26 degrees of Virgo, which will be a significant degree point for the rest of the year. And in January, K2 will cross over this point. Alas, this is also the point where Netanyahu has his moon, which can cause sadness and depression. Two other key players in geopolitics have planets here as well. That is Putin and Xi Jinping. But they have slower moving planets in this sign, so mostly I'd say that this affects generations. However, Putin does have his Mercury at 29 degrees of Libra, which is pretty close, and I'm in hope that his Mercury maybe can establish some communications with whatever is taking place. You know, perhaps he could be instrumental in slowing the war between Gaza and Israel. I know that he did have a meeting with Hamas, so I don't know whether that is something where he's having a positive effect on everything that's going on. You can only hope. So at the end of October and through November, the Sun and Mars are conjunct. And there is a really hot point around 25 to 27 degrees of Libra that also goes into Scorpio. So who can that affect? The King of England, Joe Biden, Abbas, the leader of Palestine, the EU, India, China and Canada. Their charts are also affected, but I can't guarantee the accuracy on these charts. However, Lula da Silva does have a planet in there, and there is a fixed star at this very degree, and that's Zubin al-Shamali. I think that's how it's pronounced. This star is about politics, war and religion, and there is a grand cross between Pluto, the moon and the nodes. With the stellium that we currently have in Libra, this can be to do with contracts, justice, the masses and other Libra things, and this will be the beginning of November. And around the 27th of November, we can see Saturn is aspecting Mars and the Sun is conjunct with it in Scorpio. And the moon's in opposition. So this is going over Joe Biden's house of the body. So he could have a health issue or an attempt on his life. But Jupiter is in the 6th house around his moon. So, you know, is this going to be enough to keep him safe? Well, potentially it could be. So Mars and the Sun can be kings, authoritarian and military, and there is a mutual aspect between Mars and Saturn around this time. So we have aspects to Kamala Harris's Saturn, which is in her 9th house, and also to Joe Biden's K2, but America's moon is in the 3rd. Transiting K2 is also aspecting Aquarius. The Mercury of the Brexit chart is also impacted as well at the beginning of December. So Rahu goes into Pisces, and on Christmas Day, Rahu aspects Mars, which can increase anger and tensions. And this could impact Macron and France, as his Venus is also aspect. So this is culture, banks, financial affairs. And I just want to cover the previous eclipse on the 25th of October 2022. So this took place at 7 degrees of Libra, and it passed over a large area, which is illustrated here. And of course, a lot of events have happened in this very area, and we saw horrendous earthquakes in Syria, Turkey and Afghanistan, as well as the war with Gaza and Israel. Interestingly, the chart of Israel has its ascendant at 7 degrees. The eclipse on the 14th of October 2023, which has just gone at the beginning of the month, this occurred over the Americas, and this occurred at 26 degrees of Virgo. So for the next year, this is a sensitive area for world events. And the next eclipse, 8th of April 2024, occurs again over North America, and this time it's 4 degrees of Pisces. Who's got planets there? Well, Justin Trudeau, his moon is there, and that could be something that's amiss for Canada. And he also has Uranus in Virgo. So both points here are hit. There is something that could happen to him, especially with the moon being touched there. So there could be a financial problem for Canada, looking at the houses affected. The EU also has a Venus in this area, so there could be some cultural impacts. The 28th of October 2023, just passed a couple of days ago, we had an incredibly strange day, and this was the day of the eclipse. So where I live, we had the most unusual and angry storm that I've ever seen. And in fact, I read in the news that there was a little town, Littlehampton, literal little town, in the south of England, and it was hit with a tornado, and it was rated a T4. And also on this day we had 2 high-profile freak accidents, and we had Matthew Perry, who played Chandler Bing in Friends, and also a sportsman named Adam Johnson, and he was an American ice hockey player who'd moved over to the UK to play for one of the teams over here. So if you look at Matthew Perry's chart, we can see that the eclipse occurred at 10 degrees of Aries and Libra, and he has 2 planets on this axis. One planet is the moon, which is the first house ruler of the body in Libra, and in Aries he has a very intense malefic, which is also debilitated, Saturn. And not only does it rule one of the Maraka houses, it also rules the most evil house, the 8th. And this is a very unfortunate accident that happened to him, and we must be really careful when eclipses go over our personal planets, especially when they're quite weak. And then we had that awful accident with Adam Johnson, and I don't have a birth time for him, but just looking at his birthday, it's enough to see how violent that this recent eclipse was. You know, it's 11 degrees of Libra, and he has his Jupiter exactly opposite, and 11 degrees of Libra, and he has his Jupiter there. And this planet, it must have some kind of connection to, you know, unpleasant houses in order to trigger an event like that, as well as maybe he was in a dasha of some of these planets as well. But unfortunately I don't have that information. But you know, if we look at the Aries combination, you've got Ketu and Mars, and this is so explosive, and being in the nakshatra Kritika as well, you know, that's so cutting. And he died in the hospital after he sustained a cut to his throat area that was caused by another player's skate. You know, we have minimal information about this chart, I've said, and his moon changes signs during the day, so I can't even be sure whether the moon is where it is. But both of these men's charts were triggered by the eclipse, and we need to take heed of the current climate. And if you have planets in these areas, just, you know, be careful, but don't assume that something like this will certainly happen. You know, celebrities do have very extreme charts, and that's why they are famous. So I would be a little bit more concerned if you had a very weak or very strong planet that is afflicted there, and then it also owns a bad house. But I think what's really made this day so violent, angry and shocking is the fact that the eclipse occurred on a fixed star called El Sheraton, which sits at 10 degrees of Aries. And this is associated with the horn of the ram, and it can be associated with impulsivity and violence. I mean, you think about the horn of the ram, what is it there for? It's about spontaneous self-defense and a huge retaliation. And so we, you know, take that into the climate of the world that we have at the moment. But usually a fixed star would have to be very close to personal planets to make an impact, you know, within a degree. But, you know, it is a sensitive spot for, you know, a whole year after this. And, you know, just be careful. Just be careful. I think caution in general is in order for everyone this year, especially in the Americas where this eclipse was visible. And the concerning thing to me is that Lula da Silva does have a planet at 10 degrees of Libra that could also be triggered, and you know, it's debilitated. So it is a concern. And then we'll also have, you know, planets passing over the previous eclipse point in Aries. But, you know, I'll cover that in detail at a later date. But I hope this has been helpful and that everybody remains safe and happy and healthy, and that everything's wonderful. Wonderful in a sea of horrific news. And you know, I think it's a difficult time emotionally for people all around the world when you kind of look at your TV and you're constantly being fed horror. And I'll be honest, the media has become more and more horrific with what it shows, and especially when the media has an agenda. I would advise to everybody, even if it's out of curiosity, you know, if you want to look at the coverage of, you know, both sides of what's going on, watch Western media, watch Eastern media, check out, you know, Al Jazeera. That's a great resource for you know, pretty much an opposing point of view, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think there's two sides to every story, and yeah, but these eclipses have been pretty significant, and it's changed my whole view of eclipses, and I've realised how important they are. But thank you very much for listening to me rattle on. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.